My name is Christian Ashley, a seminary student and servant of God, and you are listening to the Let Nothing Move You podcast, a proud Anazal Ministries podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to the next episode of the Let Nothing Move You podcast. I'm your host, Christian Ashley, as we continue on through the book of Matthew. Today, we're going to be in Matthew 20, and we're going to be starting off in verses 1 through 16. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and to them he said, "You go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right I will give you." So they went. Going out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, he did the same. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing. And he said to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" They said to him, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You go into the vineyard too." And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last up to the first." And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. Now when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, "These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge my generosity? So the last will be first, and the first last." Building up off the statements from the previous chapter in regards to the rich young man and the disciples' reactions to him, Jesus points out how the first will be last. Actually, the last will be first and the first last. And gives us this parable here discussing how laborers working in a vineyard are paid the same amount regardless of the work they put into it. And this has been interpreted many ways. I would say the wrong way of looking at this is saying that the Pharisees are the beginning, or the Jewish nation is the beginning here, and they're upset at new people being brought in. I understand where people go here, but that kind of falls flat because this is talking about people who are part of the same team. And just because one is born Jewish and just because one was a Pharisee did not mean you were automatically on the team. The only people on the team are those who submit themselves to Jesus and agree to work with him for the master and legitimately work with him and not put their own interests ahead of him and say that they're working with the master. So I would disregard any commentary about that or any exposition based around that idea, because this is people. These are people who are working for the master, but some have been there longer than others. And I think as a church, this is something that kind of slips through the cracks far more often than it should. And I don't think a lot of the times it's meant by the people who espouse such views, as in like that's their intent. It is part of their hearts. Don't get me wrong. It's still evil to think this way. But I think it's something that kind of, like I said, it just slips through the cracks and we don't really notice until maybe we lashed out at one person, or maybe we start thinking of ourselves as better than them because we got there a little sooner. We became the faith a little sooner. And then we have to have that moment of, oh no, I'm acting pridefully. I'm acting in a way that's not loving. I shouldn't be doing this. I need to go and ask for forgiveness, is what a good Christian would do. But Jesus is bringing up the point here that it doesn't matter when you start laboring for the kingdom. What matters is that you did. This isn't a participation trophy. This isn't just a way for people to say, "Oh, heaven's just a get out of hell free card." It's like, no, this is, you put in the work. And yeah, some people put in the work a lot earlier than you. No, I came to faith when I was 6 years old. And you know what? Compared to a lot of other people, I've done more. But you know what? There were also people who came to faith when they were 5. And there's people who've been alive longer than I, who maybe they came to faith when they were 4 or 5, and they've lived 70, 80 years or plus. And if I start measuring myself up to them, if they've been doing their job, they're going to have more accomplishments than me. They're going to have brought more people to faith. They're going to have more opportunities to serve and love others and further the kingdom. And it's foolishness to think that way. It is foolishness for me to compare myself to someone else and say, I am better than them because they just became a baby Christian. I know more theology. I went to seminary. I am so much smarter than them. I am so much better than them. When there are other people out there who are better than me. And it would be foolish of them to then look at me and say, he's only been on this planet for 35 years. Uh, he's only been a Christian for about 29 of those years. And look at what I've done compared to him. It's like, no, Jesus is killing that instinct in ourselves to dare compare ourselves to others. What is that saying? Comparison is the thief of joy, or something like that. And that's kind of precisely what it is. It kills our faith at times when all we want to do is compare and contrast versus going, wait, that's what they did for the kingdom? Let me praise their accomplishments. You did what you were supposed to do. We're part of the same team. I get to glorify in the fact that you were subservient to God. You submitted yourself. You did the right thing, not because you think yourself so great, but because you know that you're not and God is. And yet you did this despite yourself to work for Him so that others can benefit. Whether that be missionary work, whether that be working in a homeless shelter or a soup kitchen or what have you. Like, we can't bother comparing ourselves in that regard because people are meant for different things and we're meant to come to faith at different points in our lives. So all these times, what basically happens here is this takes place about over the course of 12 hours in the midst of the parable, to show that, hey, you start in the early morning and get all this done. And then other people join in. So the third hour, I think, is 6 in the morning, if I'm remembering correctly, and then it ends at 6 p.m. is what we would call it. That obviously they had different designations for time back in the day. That's why it doesn't line up with us because guess what? Other cultures are different. But you understand, don't you? A little bit of the friction that comes up here. Maybe you've been a part of a group project, or maybe you've done something at work and you were there early, you got things done, and then another worker comes in, a coworker comes in, and they help out. They do work, but they didn't do as much as you. They weren't there as long as you, and they get the same credit as you. Is that fair? No, it's not fair. And that's okay when it comes to the kingdom. When it comes to the world, yeah, there's some more arguments to be made there about being fairly accredited for what you've done, sure. But this is not what I was talking about. This is talking about those working for the kingdom, those who have said, yes, Lord, not my way, your way. And they start off so earlier than others. They've been through a lot more spiritual training. They've gotten a lot more work done. They sat through the sermons. They stayed awake. They helped out. They gave generously. And some new upstart comes in and they start changing things. Or they start asking questions. And it's like, oh, well, you clearly don't understand as much as I do because I've been at this for a while. So let me help you out, brother, sister. And that pride is something Jesus wants to kill in us. We cannot abide in that because then we start resenting others. We start thinking we're superior to them. And that is antithetical to the Christian walk. And God has no time for that. So when these workers come out and say, but Lord, we've been here, we've worked out in the sun, we did all this stuff, but they get paid the same amount as us. And what does the master say? Did we not agree on this price beforehand? The answer is yes. So it's my money. I can do whatever I want with it. If they join in and they only did an hour of work and I want to pay them the same wage that I pay you, I can do that because it's my money. You are working for me. I get to set the rate. And this is not talking about capitalism or anything about that. So get that out of your heads. This is talking about working in service to the kingdom. God awards us all the same in that we get salvation, we get His presence, we get Him comforting us through our lives, and it doesn't matter when we start. It doesn't matter what we were doing before he decides to pay us. That's the good news. It doesn't matter when we started, where we were, what we were doing. What matters is that we came to him. We said we're not good enough. And he said, I make you good enough. I'm going to pay you the same wages that I paid for the person who came 2 weeks before you, 2 months before you, 2 years before you, 2 decades, however long. So guess what? Peter, Paul, David, they get the same wages that we do. They get salvation because they went before their Savior and said, Lord, save us from ourselves. That's good news. Because if you look at those men's lives, and there are plenty of others I could have put up there, women too, you'd go, man, ain't a single one of them deserves it. And that's the point. You don't deserve what I gave you. Well, we made an agreement. The agreement is when you come to me, when you labor for the kingdom, when you recognize your lowliness and that you will never work to be able to satisfy me on your own merit, and you submit yourselves and you say yes to me, you get the same wages as everyone else. Because otherwise, we all receive the same wages that we deserve. Because God is unfair, and that is a good thing. We don't get what we deserve, which is the wages of sin that are death. And this is why we need to look at something like this. If we want to be good servants, we cannot place ourselves on a hierarchy and say, well, all right, let's line them up. Let's get everyone interviewed. All right, Shelley, you came to faith when you were 37. Jackson, you came to faith when you were 22. So you divide by whatever. And look, here's our tier list. Here are the more righteous people in the church. And obviously the pastor is going to be the first one at the top. We'll probably throw the associate and the youth pastor and the worship minister, maybe the secretary, maybe they're a little more righteous than you because we work in the church. And you see the stupidity that can devolve into an idea like that. Who's to say that the pastor is the most righteous person in the church? It probably should be. I mean, ideally, you would want that person to be the most righteous, but guess what? They're still just a human being. That man is still just a human being. And how dare we try and put up a list and go, okay, all right, well, you prayed 2 more times this week, so you're raised from 77 to 53. And that human stupidity to rank things, to make us sound more superior to others than we are, is something Jesus wants to kill in us. I will say that as many times as I have to say it. Jesus wants to kill that in his church and in us. Otherwise, the last will never be first, and the first will never be last. That's not how this is supposed to work. We are supposed to go, I am nothing without him. My fellow believers are supposed to be thinking the same thing. We are supposed to be equal in that regard, and that we are nothing. And yet he makes us into something. He makes us into those who will last. He makes us into the people who will actually be first, because we did what we were supposed to do, because we submitted to him, because we furthered the kingdom, whatever that is, whether it be evangelism, whether that be hospitality, whether it be just listening to someone, whether that be a head pastor or someone who's just listening in the pew or the chair or wherever you're at in your church, online, I don't care. It doesn't matter where we are and what we did unless we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, and unless we're not thinking correctly. Because when we don't think correctly, we're not going to act correctly. So if that desire is in your heart to look at someone else and go, yeah, I'm better than them. I know what they did last week. They haven't worked as hard as I do. I'm practically at the church every single day. I want you to ask yourself the question, why do I do what I do? Is it so I can have the accolades of man? Or is it because I want to work in the kingdom? And I want Jesus' name to be spread far and wide, wherever he's told you to work, because everyone has a different role to play. And if you're in that spot, just take some time in reflection, take some time in prayer, and ask God, kill this instinct inside of me, because it is not healthy for me. And I want to be healthy. I can't be a good physician to others when my heart is crippled by weakness and sin and disease. So let us go out. Let us be last so that we may be first. And this is something the world will never understand. This is antithetical, especially, This is antithetical all over the globe, but American ideals, of course. I live in America, obviously. The idea of I make more money than you. I don't have to work as much as you. I can do this. I can go on vacation whenever I want. That makes me better than you because I have XYZ, because I have two mansions, because I have a yacht, because I have this hot trophy wife, because I have these kids who will carry on my legacy, whatever that is. That's antithetical to the gospel. I'm not saying it's bad to own things. Once again, back to the last time. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to be rich. Once again, refer back to the last time. What I am saying is that idea of if I just acquire, if I just make my name greater, that has nothing to do with serving God. That has everything to do with serving self. And we can't afford that in this world. The church is screwed up enough as it is. We can't make things more difficult than it already is. Let us make things, easier on ourselves by just doing what Jesus said to do. That's the thing that breaks me a lot by some parts of modern Christianity and people who would call themselves Christians and have these false ideologies. They say, oh, well, Jesus actually said this, or I think that Jesus said this, or I want is probably the more apt way of putting it, Jesus to have said this. So therefore, I'm going to think that way, even though it had nothing to do with what he said. It had nothing to do with the law. It has nothing to do with God. It's just their idea of what things should be like. And it's that pride that takes over, that confidence of, oh, I feel icky about this. So if I change it to be something that is more acceptable to me and it tickles my ears, then it's fine. And you know what? I'm spreading the name of Jesus, so it's even better. And that's something the church can't abide because it's antithetical to truth. It's antithetical to scripture. It's antithetical to God. And especially antithetical not only to him, but to furthering the kingdom, because nothing gets further when you dilute the message, when you lie about it, whether you think you're lying about it or not. And we can't accept that either. So if you want to be first, be last. If you want to be his servant, if you want to get the praise, because we do want praise, and not wanting praise is not necessarily a bad thing, because we do deserve praise when we do something good. It's when that praise turns into pride that it becomes a problem. If you want to have that praise levied upon you in a correct fashion, when your heart is right and you're being acknowledged for doing things for the kingdom, be last. Be everything as this world says you're not supposed to be. Because the world says something is good, guess what? I'm going to put it on the board there. It's probably wrong. Every now and then they get some things close, but it's not good enough. Only his word is good enough. And only working with him is good enough. Now we'll move on from there to verses 17 through 19. And as Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside, and on the way he said to them, see, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. And he will be raised on the third day. Third time's the charm, right? That's how it's supposed to go. It's when you're supposed to understand things. It's when you're supposed to figure out, oh, this is how I'm actually, I'm supposed to be making this way or understanding it this way. Well, not according to the life of the disciples. Now, it doesn't focus on what they think, but we really don't need to, because insert previous attempts at Jesus to help them understand this before. But this is a wonderful thing. It doesn't sound like it. Well, I'm going to go up to Jerusalem. I'm going to be set aside. The chief priests and scribes are going to take me. They're going to condemn me to death. And you're going to make it out, right? No, they're going to deliver me to the Gentiles. They're going to mock me, flog me, and crucify me. But I'm going to be back on the third day. Can you imagine hearing that? Divorcing ourselves from what we know. Because yes, hallelujah, praise Jesus, he comes back to life. We have the benefit of what is known as hindsight. So that makes the choice a little easier for us to understand what is going on here. This is unprecedented. So I will cut the disciples a little bit of slack. Not too much, because they don't deserve it, but I will cut them some slack, because this has never happened. They don't get it. They have been taught improperly. They have failed to learn properly from Jesus. So they think this is some way of, maybe he's testing us. Maybe he's just spouting some nonsense just to see how we react. Like, what is going on here? They don't get it, because this has never happened. God has never come down in the form of both man and God, preached to the masses, loved on them, healed their sick, casted out demons, and then said that he's going to die and come back to life in 3 days. This, other than actually having a true appreciation of the scriptures and having the best expositor ever, as your teacher, there's no way to prepare for this. And you know what? They should have had those things. And I guarantee that there were some rabbis out there who actually got this. And they probably lived before Jesus came around. Or like Nicodemus, they eventually came around to the right way of thinking because they did study scripture and they went, wait, Jesus did this, Jesus said that. This is confirmation of prophecy. Cool. This is what I should have been, or this is probably what I've been teaching, or maybe I'll be teaching right now. Regardless, they weren't as prepared as they should have been compared to someone like David, who didn't have the context of any of this, and yet God gave him multiple prophecies about Jesus as Messiah, who would come from his line, who would die and be mocked and be abused and beaten and then resurrected. And yet without all the proper context, David came to that faith. David taught people about that in his Psalms, in the writings we have from him, but the disciples didn't. Now it's important to note that this is the end, that we're about to hit the end of Matthew, obviously, but this is near the end of Jesus' ministry. We've had about 3 or so years of him talking to people and speaking to the crowds and delivering the sick and the demon possessed and oppressed from their maladies, and dealing with the Pharisees who wouldn't listen to reason, Roman authorities, travel conditions, not having enough food, not having enough money, and yet somehow always God providing. It's all leading up to this, to his triumphant entry into Jerusalem. And we'll get to that in the next chapter, as that is more the focus. But this is the build up to that. He is working one last time to get it into his disciples' thick skulls that he came here to die and resurrect. And they don't understand. Maybe there were follow-up questions asked. Maybe there was something more that maybe they were starting to get at. We don't know, because Matthew chooses not to write that. Why? You'd have to ask the big G. He's the one who inspired him to write it. I don't know is my answer. But judging by the disciples' actions, I don't think this was very fruitful until after the resurrection, until after they could look back and say, he said this was supposed to happen, this is what he did, he said this was going to happen, it did. Oh, this is what he was trying to teach us. So yes, I'm very harsh on them, as I should be, but I get it. And I think what we have here as a problem, not only in America, but the entire world, is that we don't understand other people. We enforce our own views upon them. It's like, they should get this. You know what? They should get this. No one else should have been more prepared, other than the Pharisees, than them. Both groups, for different reasons, should have known exactly what was going to happen here, because they had direct access to God's word, and they had direct access to God in the flesh in Jesus. But at that same time, we have to look at the totality of who these people are, and we have to show a little grace. And the world is very bad, and Christians sometimes are very bad at showing grace, because we want to say, well, if I were among the 12, I would have been his follower. I would have been the real one. I would have followed Jesus. I'd have known, Jesus, yes, you have to die on that cross, and you're going to save the world. Foolishness, pride, arrogance says that. You know why? Because we want to think we're better than them. We want to think that somehow, if we didn't have the knowledge that we did, that we would have known all this. We would have gotten it. Forgetting that if we had been born here, we would have grown up with a rabbi teaching us scripture who would have had us to memorize it and regurgitate it, rather than actually understanding what was going on. Once again, there were good rabbis out there who did their job. I'm not saying that there weren't. But if the Pharisees are any indication, not all of them were in it for the right reasons. Not all of them did it well. Not all of them taught the people under their care well. So no wonder they turn out like they do. And how dare we, with our chronological snobbery, look back and say, those idiots. In the same way we look back at Adam and Eve and say, those fools. If I'd been there in the garden, I would have said no to that serpent. I would have hit that fruit out of my wife's hand and said, no, you know better. God said not to do this. Or we go to the Israelites, as we've gone through the entire Pentateuch, showing their travels after the Exodus throughout the desert, and God, nope, those foolish, faithless Israelites, they don't even believe in God. God is literally there as a pillar of fire and a cloud of smoke at night. Excuse me. Reverse that. Cloud of smoke during the day, pillar of fire at night. And they should have just accepted the manna and be happy about it. They shouldn't have quarreled and rebelled. They should have just accepted the truth, because that's what I would have done. No, that is foolish thinking, and it has no place in the church, because we are stupid when we say that, and we cannot afford to be stupid. The world is already stupid enough, and it already thinks Christianity is stupid. So when we say stupid things like that, all we do is enforce it. Because if we were in this exact same scenario, I would just be as stupid as they are. I wouldn't get it. I should know better. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's no personal responsibility here. What I am saying is that I don't get to look at them and say, I would be better. Because that goes back to how this starts. Remember laborers in the vineyard? And go, well, they may have gotten there before me, chronologically speaking, but I know more than them. Well, of course we do. We've got the book. We've got all the evidence. Like, could you imagine showing up to a Babylonian astronomer in the 6th century BC and saying, you don't know how many planets there are, you stupid idiot? Well, of course they don't know. They don't have the knowledge we have now. And for some reason, we've reduced Pluto from being a planet too. So I don't think we're that smart either. But you see what I'm saying? Looking back at them and saying, why didn't you get it, is a question we should ask, because it's a valid question. But then we go further and demonize them and say, those idiots, they're not as smart as me. Well, yeah, you have more information, you have more evidence available to you. So obviously you know more. And then we think if we had been in those situations, the 3 I mentioned, or even more, that we would have somehow turned out on top, that we would have resisted sin, as if we don't have a hard enough time resisting our own sin in this life. It's foolishness. And it's foolishness that gets us to get away from the point of this. Jesus is speaking truth to them so that when it happens, they can go back and go, he said this would happen. He truly is the Son of God. He truly is the Messiah. Because he came back after the 3rd day, after dying. No one came to him. No prophet came to him and touched him and said, Jesus, arise. Because that's how people were resurrected back in the day. That's how Jesus did it to Lazarus. But no one's going to do that for him. It is empowered by his own holy power that he's able to come back to life. And they're going to look back at this and go, we were fools, we should have understood. And then, rather than remain mired in that foolishness and stupidity, they learn from it. The Peter of Matthew 20 is not the Peter of Acts 2. What's the difference? The death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's what changes everything. That turns the idiot that we've seen before, who keeps opening his big stupid mouth and is about to chop off the ear of someone who didn't deserve it later on, into the man who can boldly proclaim in front of thousands of people that Jesus was the Messiah. They need to come to faith as the Spirit is poured down upon them. So let us not look at these people and say they're just stupid. You know what? They are stupid. But so are we, if that's the only part we get from this. As if we're somehow superior to them. Get out of your own head. Get out of your own pride. Be last and say, Lord, thank you for delivering this message. We don't deserve it. And we're going to continue on from there to verses 20 through 28. Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came up to him with her sons, and kneeling before him, she asked him for something. And he said to her, what do you want? She said to him, say that these 2 sons of mine are to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your kingdom. Jesus answered, you do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am to drink? They said to them, we are able. He said to them, you will drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father. And when the 10 heard it, they were indignant at the 2 brothers. But Jesus called them to him and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be your slave. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Have you ever met that parent in church who loves their children very much? There's no denying that. But then they do things and say things and try and orchestrate things to make their kids superior to the other kids in the children's ministry or the youth or even adults as time goes on. It twists something to do that. It turns what is natural and good, the love of a mother wanting to see her children succeed, or a father in this case, it's not gender exclusive here. But let's focus on Salome here. She's named in other parts of the Gospels. She wants a reward for her children. Why? Well, because she loves them as their mother, but also because it gives her a sense of accomplishment and pride that her sons will be higher than everyone else. Don't you see? I made them who they are. I'm the one who helped them and assisted them and made sure they got their Torah training done or what have you. Or we can go, I'm the one who brought them that fancy Bible, by the way, that has all those notes so that they can be a little smarter than your kid because they can look something up. Or it's embroidered with their name. Or I've got them the vocal singing lesson so that they can lead worship one day. So you can see my child every Sunday. Do you see the sickening effect that has? And look, there is nothing wrong inherently with wanting to see your children succeed. That's the purpose of parenthood, is to raise your children so that they can go spread their own wings, however that ends up looking like, because there's different ways of that being a thing, and let them fly. That's good. You want them to succeed. You want to know that you put in the work and effort so that then if you are dead, because it's going to happen when you are dead, I should say, your legacy is going to continue. You did the work, and now they're going to do the work. That's good. That's how things are supposed to be. But then you see the twist that gets undone by sin. It turns, well, look at my legacy. Look at the work I did. My son should be at your right and left hand, Jesus, ruling over other people because they're mine. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And it's that foolishness that Jesus can't abide. And he is so very gracious here. Everyone involved here deserves a tongue lashing. No, no, swearing wasn't evil. They all deserve a good country cussing. As someone who's been through several of those myself. But Jesus is patient. Jesus is kind. And so he tests everyone involved. What does he do? All right. You don't know what you're asking for. Are you able to drink the cup that I am to drink? And there's layers to that. It's the cup of suffering, the metaphor. It's the bitterness that he's going to drink, when he's in the midst of his crucifixion. And there's also what's going to tie into their lives later on and how they're going to have to go through it. You're not going to be there by my side, but you said you're able to take this cup. Okay. Remember that. And what happens to these two, James and John? James is the first apostolic martyr. Of course, there's Stephen, who's the first martyr of the early church. But James, out of the 12, is the first one to go. You think you could drink my cup, James? Do you think that you can endure the suffering and the imprisonment and the torture and the execution? Is that what you say when you say I'm able? You don't get it yet. You spoke out of youth. You spoke out of impetuousness. You spoke out of pride and arrogance. But one day, you're going to understand. And John's different to an extent because he's the last one to go. Now, some have said that this is deliberately done by God. It's way left and right, first and last, kind of connecting the disciples in that way. And I see the logic behind it. I don't know if I stand behind it as like that's exactly what God intended, but I could definitely see why someone would think that way. The point being is that John is also going to suffer, and he's going to suffer longer than his brother because he's going to last to the 90s, almost some even say to the hundreds AD. Are you able to take that cup of suffering, John? when you're exiled to the island of Patmos and I'm giving you revelatory visions of the future? Are you able to write that down? When you're writing the gospel, you're going to remember how every time you interacted with me that, you didn't get it? Are you going to show yourself as the fool that you are? You're going to have this heavy responsibility, John. When you're being tortured by the Pharisees, by the Romans, are you going to be able to go through that? Are you going to take that cup of suffering? We are able, they say. Okay, remember that. And I can almost guarantee that they did. Now, without any specific writing left behind that says that, I don't remember if that actually happens in Acts 12 when James dies, him talking about that. I'm fairly certain it doesn't. But I could almost guarantee that they think about this before it's their end, or in the midst of their suffering before all this, when God has designed for them to die. Oh, this is what you meant. The cup of suffering that you're going to take, when you serve as a ransom for many, Lord, I get it. Jesus, I get it. And we still didn't do anything compared to you. And they're going to recognize their place is to be last. And the reward that they're going to get is so great, so wondrous. They're not there yet. And of course, neither the other disciples, including, by the way, because I love bringing it up every time this happens, Judas, who somehow thinks that he is worthy of sitting next to the left or right hand side of Jesus in judgment over the nations, in judgment over the Jews, in judgment over everyone who didn't believe. And these fools think they qualify for it. And they're so angry at James and John because they said out loud what the rest of them are thinking. They just got there first because their mother stepped in. Not even them, by the way. They had a proxy come in and speak on their behalf, which kind of shows some cowardice there, too. Oh, well, he might say no to us, even though we're bros, but he loves his mother. Maybe he loves our mother, too, in the same way. So when she asks him a favor, we get what we want. But going to the disciples, they're all upset because they want what James and John asked for. They think Jesus, even though he has given no evidence at all that this is going to be a thing, is going to raise up an army and fight against the Romans and rule over Israel. So they want to be part of the team where they're making the decisions. They want to be a general or an advisor or what have you, so they can show we were there from the beginning, we're the best. Oh, which, by the way, ties into the beginning again. We were here first, so we deserve these positions of authority, Jesus. We deserve to be called apostles later on because we were here at the beginning, because we were the first and the best. And everyone else who comes behind us, not as good. And yet Jesus destroys that once more. Even when he's telling them they're going to get some of what they want, there's just not going to be in the way they expect. They will be able to exert authority over others. They'll be able to do it because they were the 12. Outside of Judas, Matthias is going to come in later on in Acts, but it's not going to be in the same way because you, in your service as rulers, are actually going to be servants and slaves, which I no doubt broke their minds because that makes no sense according to human wisdom. How can you be a ruler and yet be a servant and a slave? Well, I'm here to tell you, if you want to rule in the Christian church, regardless of your position, the best way to do that is to submit from the pastor down to the newest convert. We submit to each other, looking after the needs of each other's and those who are not his and those who will be his. We do this for those who are born again, those not yet born again, and those who will never be born again. Even though they will never get the same thing that we will, we still look after them. We look after those who haven't made that decision yet and fallen in front of their face and said, Lord, you're enough, I'm not, to the same people who have. Says we're serving them, we prove we're the best. And there are people who twist this, of course, and say, well, because I do X, Y, Z, I'm better than you. But once again, refer back to the beginning, chapter 20, and realize that's a foolish, stupid way of thinking and has no place in the church. This is not a hierarchy. This is not a tier ranking system. This is everyone in submission, working with God, saying, yes, Lord, when he says, go and do this, I command you. And that's where they're going to end up. Outside of John, every single one of these former fools will become great men and leaders of the church because they acted like servants and slaves to the people under them. And the world is going to be changed as a result. And you know what's going to change it even more? The Son of Man, who did not come to be served, but to serve the totality of humanity, who have given the opportunity to say yes to him by his sacrifice. So I am giving my life as a ransom for many. Does it say all? No. For many. Because not all will say yes. The sacrifice has the same conditions for all, but the ransom is only going to be paid for the many who say yes. Clear distinction there that needs to be made, because he's the only one good enough to do it. Because unlike his faithless disciples at times, at this point in their lives, he understands who he is. He knows who God is. He knows his purpose in this world. He knows his great love for all of humanity, and he is willing to lay his life down for the sheep as a ransom for many. And we're not going to get into all the ransom theories, whether God is buying them back from Satan, back from himself, back from some other third party or what have you. Let's not get lost in the weeds here. The ransom is being given, and only those who say, yes, Lord, will be saved. Because why would you ransom someone who doesn't want to come back with you? They're not going to listen. They're going to be a hindrance. They don't want to be part of the team. So don't have them. You offer them the same thing. Look, I'm offering you the greatest deal that's ever existed in the world. Salvation. They're going to say no, because I'm first. Jesus, you're literally the last in my life. I will never serve you. I will never listen to you. I want nothing to do with you. I'm first. I'm the best. So don't waste your time ransoming me, because I don't even think I need to be ransomed in the first place. And that folly is what's going to cost them their eternity. But we don't dwell on that part. It's not pleasant. It's not happy. But we see the joy here, the good news being delivered in this gospel. Jesus Christ is serving the Son of Man, not being served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many, so that they who say yes are his eternally. Nothing can snatch that away from them. If it was possible to be taken away, he can't say what he's saying. He can say, well, I gave you the ransom, but I guess I didn't pay enough. No, these are his, secure. You joined the team. Once again, it doesn't matter when, it doesn't matter what you do in the midst of it. Once you are on the team, you're on the team. There are no cancellations. There are no firings, no resignations accepted. Game, set, match, join the team. And we're going to see in the last part of here, some other people join the team. So let's finish off today by looking through verses 29 through 34. And as they went out of Jericho, a great crowd followed him. And behold, there were two blind men sitting by the roadside. And when they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David. The crowd rebuked them, telling them to be silent. But they cried out all the more, Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David. And stopping, Jesus called them and said, what do you want me to do for you? They said to him, Lord, let our eyes be open. And Jesus, in pity, touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed him. Why is this included after what happened before this? And once again, keeping in mind, Matthew is not writing in chapters and verses as we know them today. That is a later invention, a very good tradition and invention, don't get me wrong. But this would have just been straight from the last thing that he put. Why does Matthew put us here? To compare and contrast the faith of the disciples and the faith of these two blind men. What an absolute difference it is between these two groups, where, You know what? Jesus had called Peter the Christ. He even got renamed as Peter. Great. But where's this faith for him? Where is he crying out, Lord, have mercy on me, son of David? He said the right thing. They're saying the right things. So what's the difference? Their faith. Because look at how they act. And then compare that to how Peter is going to act before the crucifixion. Lord, have mercy on us, son of David. And what does the crowd do? Rebuke them. Who said, are they even following Jesus legitimately? Doesn't sound like it. Sounds like they're in it the same way the disciples are. Could be wrong. There could be some who are actually doing their job, and the crowd is just being used collectively here. But they tell them to shut up. But what do the men do? Did they listen? Did they comply? No. They cry out all the more. Why? Because they are in desperate need of a savior. And they have a desperate need to have their affliction taken from them. They've heard the stories. But unlike other people, they didn't just leave him as stories or leave him as, wow, he could do this for us. Say, he can do this to us. Why? He can bring back our eyesight. Why? Because he's a great prophet? Because he's a great teacher? No, because he is the Lord, the Son of David, the promised Messiah. Something has to give in light of that information, and they give themselves to Jesus. What do you want me to do for you? Lord, let our eyes be open. And pity touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed him. They get it. They had a physical need. Don't get me wrong. I can't imagine living life that way. And I know plenty of people do, and they are strong for it. They're able to take care of themselves in ways that other people can't fathom. But I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And look at this. Look at how Jesus responds. What does he do? He saves their physical needs. And he saves their spiritual needs. Because they get it. Because he's about to go and die. And he can still show pity and compassion on these men before he goes, knowing the cup that he's going to drink. And he's choosing to take that cup anyways, because this is further proof that he is who he says he is. And the Pharisees are gonna be angry. They're gonna be upset because he keeps doing things they don't want him to do. He keeps being who they don't want him to be because he's not who they want him to be. He's not their idea of the Messiah. Therefore, you cannot be him, even though all evidence otherwise points to the contrary. We can't accept you, Jesus. The disciples, we can't accept you, Jesus. These two blind men, we accept you, Jesus. And they followed him. So let us go out there and do the same. Let us be like these men and seek him. Lord, help me with this. Lord, help me out of this financial situation. Lord, help me from this illness. If you will, you can. But above all else, Lord, change my heart. Jesus, change me from who I am and make me yours alone. I want to serve no other idol. I would never want to serve myself again. I just want to serve you alone. And they do. And compared to faithless people around them, who's the first? It's men and women like this who recognize their need, submit to his authority, and follow him. So thank you all for everything that you do. Please get a chance to leave a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice to help us with the ratings there, to help us find more people. Feel free to share the show with your friends and family members. If you're interested in my own fiction writing, you can find my work at startwritersguild.com or on Amazon by searching for the name MC Ashley. If you're all interested in some further solid studies into the Bible and its teachings, then check out the other members of the Anazale Ministries Podcasting Network. You can find me specifically on Systematic Ecology, Why I Don't Like, Friday Night Frights, and Joyful Noises. You can contact me at anythingmoviepodcast@gmail.com. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Joshua Knoll for the editing that he does and for the music he has to the podcast. And with all that in mind, God bless you all in accordance to his will and not mine, and allow me one more time to remind you, let nothing move you.